Hi guys, and welcome to Studio Wildlife. In this video I'm going to show you Amber's process for painting this lion. I'm also going to talk through the different stages that we go through when painting realistic animal portraits in oils. As you've already seen, the first thing that we do is block in our painting with acrylics. The reason that we do this using acrylics rather than oils is just so that we can establish that first base layer straight away and paint on top of it without having to wait for the oils to dry. So you might see some people doing these underpaintings in oils first. We just prefer using acrylics first just because they dry so quickly and they allow us to continue painting over the top of this stage on that same day. Pretty much as soon as we've finished with the acrylic block-in, we can start working with oils over the top. Whereas if you were using oils straight from the get-go, you might have to wait a couple of days or a couple of hours for those oil paints to dry. Next, we've got our oil blocking, so step 2. And this step just involves pretty much what it says on the tin, paint a layer of oils. And this layer is usually just a rough layer again, it's still a blocking layer. We're just trying to add some more solid blocks of colour in oils. And again, we aren't really focusing on details here, just trying to pick up the colours from the reference photo. We are trying to block in the shapes and just establish a little bit of a base layer in oils. I like doing this with the oils because you can get a really nice smooth base layer with lots and lots of interesting colours because all the paints blend together really nicely. After leaving that layer to dry, we can start on the next stage, which is building the form. So this is another layer of oils over the top of our second layer of oils that we did before, and we're just now focusing a little bit more on the form and the structure of the lion. So we're looking at the shapes that are found within the mane, the long strands of fur, the shapes that are on its eyelids, the shapes that are on its nose. We're not going into massive amounts of detail here, but we are just trying to build up the impression of detail. We are looking at those darks and those lights, we are refining the shapes a little bit more, and we are just trying to build a 3D structure out of that 2D canvas. So we are just building up the colours with a filbert brush. We're using bristle brushes, or we use bristle brushes because they're better for oils than the synthetic brushes, and we're thinking about our focal point as we do this. What is the most important part of this painting going to be? For this painting, it's going to be the eyes. So we're going to refine the eyes a little bit more than the rest of the painting at this stage. It doesn't mean adding loads of detail, it just means get them to a place where it's clear that those eyes are going to be the focal point of that image. Then it's just about building up the rest of the painting around it, establishing that 3D form and just refining the shapes and making sure your proportions are correct and adjusting the things that need to be adjusted at this stage. It's much easier to do it at this stage rather than waiting 10 hours down the line when you've got loads of details and you find you have to adjust something. Much easier when there's not much detail down. The next stage is about the details. It's about adding those individual strands of fur. We actually missed the first part of the filming of this, so the left hand side of this lion's face has pretty much been done, but the rest of the face we've still got to do, so I'll show you that process. When painting detailed fur like this, we use a mix of brushes, but the main two that we use are a small angled brush and a small detailed brush. This is a tiny detailed brush. I think it's number 1 or it might be a half, I'm not really sure exactly what size it is, but they are tiny detailed brushes. At this stage we're actually using synthetic brushes because they are a bit softer and they are better for detailed work. As with our acrylic paintings, when we're painting fur, we start off adding darker strands first and then build up the lighter colours over the top. If you would like to learn more about how we paint fur exactly, have a look at the video that's popping up now. Okay, and then come back to this video. In that video, I go through my entire process for painting realistic fur. This stage is sometimes called the rendering stage, and as you can see, we're just following the patterns and the colours that we've already put down and just refining them a little bit more with that angled brush and that detailed brush. Really establishing the direction of that fur and the shape of the lion's face. The final stage of the painting is adding the final details. This stage, you really need to make sure that your painting is dry beforehand, especially if you're working with oils. We use this stage to adjust the colours, adjust the shadows and the highlights, and to add any final details such as whiskers and smaller strands of fur, and details on the eyes and the nose. We use a glazing technique, so that's thin washes of oil paint. We do that by using more medium than oil paint. All we're doing is washing those thin layers of paint over the top to adjust the colours and the tones without changing the actual details underneath. If you want to learn more about the glazing technique, I do have a video using acrylics, not oils, but the process is exactly the same. So I'll pop a link down to that in the description below. It's really important at this stage to not only study your reference photo to pick out those final tiny little details, but it's also important to balance that with not necessarily studying your reference photo exactly, but looking at your painting a little bit more, looking at what your painting needs. Use some of the information that you've learned while painting it, so the direction of fur, the length of fur strands, the colour of fur strands, to make adjustments to improve the painting that may not necessarily be present in the actual reference photo. For the final details, I just thought I would show you those in real time. So this isn't real time, she's finishing off her nose, but as we move into the next stage, you can see how she's just adding those final little details with that detailed brush, just mixing up the shapes of those fur strands, just adding the lightest layers over the top, just to give the impression of those wispy, loose hairs that would be there naturally in that lion's fur. Unfortunately, we missed filming the whiskers as well, but that's pretty much it. So you can see Amber's incredible oil painting of this lion. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We are working on an actual how to paint a lion video, so we will be looking in depth at how to paint a portrait like this. That one will be in acrylics, but the principles will be the same. As always, thank you so much for watching, and for more wildlife art tips, please head on over to studiowildlife.com.